This is the second video for lecture 9. In the previous video, we learned the basic logic of contracting out, and many academic researches supported that logic with empirical evidence. However, some economists, including Donald Coase or Williamson, pointed out these studies focus only on production cost and ignored transaction cost. So these scholars argue that we should see both production and transaction cost when pursuing efficiency. In this video, we'll see what kind of characteristics affect transaction cost. This means that we'll see when contracting out can be efficient. The first service characteristic which affects transaction cost is asset specificity. A service with asset specificity means that the service requires specialized investment which are applicable only to one service, but are very difficult to adapt for other services, such as power plant or water treatment plant. Asset-specific services such as water supply and electricity supply may create monopoly conditions. Specifically, specialized facilities for such asset-specific services, such as water treatment plant and power plant, cannot be used for other services. If a government contracts such service out, one contractor, private firm, will acquire asset-specific skills to use such facilities. As a consequence, the first contractor will have a huge advantage over other possible suppliers in bidding or tendering, because other suppliers cannot get any information about such asset-specific services. Furthermore, other possible suppliers might not attend bidding or tendering for that asset-specific service anymore, because it's clear that that first contractor will win the competition due to that advantage. So without competition, contracting out just means transferring monopoly power from public to private hands. As only one supplier, the first contractor tries to increase their benefits as much as possible. So without competition, government faces increased cost of negotiating contracts. This slide shows a process where contracting out makes a monopoly. In the first round, many suppliers will attend the bidding because all of them don't know much about asset-specific services. As a result of the first bidding, some of them will win the first contract, and they will compete each other to acquire more jobs. At the final stage, among these first contract winners, one company might do a really good job and it might occupy most jobs for that asset-specific services. In this situation, other suppliers might not attend bidding anymore because this monopoly supplier holds a huge advantage to win the competition, such as asset-specific skills and information about that service. In terms of buy or make decision, if a service holds high asset specificity, governments choose to make that service rather than buying. So contracting out cannot be efficient when the service holds high asset specificity. The second service characteristic that affects transaction cost is service measurability. Service measurability simply means ease of measuring outputs and outcomes of the service, or ease of monitoring inputs, actual activities of service providers. As we learned in the principal agent model, principal cannot monitor all the activities of agents. In contracting out, principal is government, and agents are contractors. As a consequence of difficulties of monitoring agents' activities, self-interested contractors, agents might be shirking. So monitoring activities of contractors' inputs is hard. However, in some activities, outcomes are even harder to measure. For instance, it's quite difficult to measure performance of mental health services because we cannot quantify a patient's mental conditions. Low service measurability will lead to several issues of contracting out. First, creaming. Since agents will be shirking with imperfect monitoring, government might set a high standard of performance. In that case, agents might focus only on clients who can give them good outcome. So creaming means that agents take only good part of the entire cake, cream. So difficulty of monitoring causes shirking behavior. To solve that shirking behavior, government tries to set a performance standard. That's the theory of principal agent model. However, difficulty of measuring outcome leads to another problem. With measurement difficulty, government is enforced to use proxy measures which cannot reflect real service quality. For instance, Department of Motor Vehicle might set a performance indicator as the number of clients per day, and then DMV officers try to shorten their time to deal with one client. As a consequence, DMV officers who pursue high performance might give up dealing with elderly or disabled clients who takes much more time than other clients. In sum, with measurement difficulty, performance indicator cannot consider a quality of process. It may just focus on outputs, which can be quantified. Furthermore, difficulty of monitoring activities and measuring outcome might encourage contractors to cheat government. So contractors might fabricate their data to report better performance than actual performance. So how can a government solve these issues with low service measurability? Maybe more regulations, or more detailed performance indicators, or more intensive monitoring. However, these solutions require very high transaction cost. In sum, low service measurability requires high transaction costs. In that case, government choose to make service by themselves rather than buying. So contracting out cannot be efficient with low service measurability. Despite these issues of transaction cost, the number of contracting out in the US government has been growing. Fredrickson and Fredrickson 2006, the course reading, warns such growing trend of contracting out. First, under growing trends of contracting out, public managers' task is to monitor contractors rather than providing service directly. So currently, public officials have fewer chance to meet with actual recipients. So public officials might not be able to acquire useful information to improve their public policy or programs. Also, some public officials might be motivated to directly provide public services and communicate with citizens. So growing trend of contracting out might decrease motivation of some public officials. The second critique against growing trends of contracting out is service measurability. The US government currently contracts many and various services out. This means that the US government should monitor many and various third parties, contractors. Due to multiplicity of third parties, it's almost impossible to set performance standards for individual service and contractors. As a consequence, the US government currently adopts one-size-fits-all approach for performance measures. So Fredrickson pointed out that the current performance measures in the US government fail to measure real outcome of public services. This is the end of Lecture 9. While the idea of transaction cost comes from general theory of organizations, I personally believe transaction cost is important, especially for government, because government tends to hold high transaction costs, such as regulation, than private organizations. In the next lecture, we'll cover privatization, and we'll use transaction concepts again. So see you in the next lecture.